At the outset, I would like to thank Banco for giving me the opportunity to address you all at this seminar. The title of this seminar is Advantage Cooperative Banking. And I would like to have my topic on managing risks as an advantage, risk as an enabler, risk as an opportunity. एक 10 साल पहले 2013 में वॉशिंगटन में इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंशियल कॉरपोरेशन की एनुअल गैदरिंग हुई थी एंड उस गैदरिंग में इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंशियल कॉरपोरेशन से जो भी बोरो करते हैं फंड्स उनको बुलाया जाता है और वहाँ 10 साल पहले उनकी थीम थी, जैसे यहाँ थीम है एडवांटेज, वहाँ थीम थी बैंकिंग विल सर्वाइव, बैंक्स मे नॉट। ये 10 साल पहले, एंड as we have seen, there have been many mergers in nationalized banks. The number of banks have come down. Even in cooperative banks, it has come down. Recently, about a week back, there was news of one bank whose license was cancelled by the Reserve Bank. So, we are in an era of what they say the VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And whereas VUCA was the pre-2019 COVID term, the post-2019 term to describe the world is banny, brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. And in this VUCA banny world, organizations which will manage their risks better, much better than others, will be the ones which will survive. And I mean survive. Change is now the only constant. And earlier it was survival of the fittest. And now it's the survival of the fitter among the fittest. It's not just survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the fitter among the fittest. And disruption is the new normal. So before disruptions disrupt you, before disruptions disrupt us, how do we disrupt disruptions to be at a source of competitive advantage is what we all must focus about. Risks. सबको पता है risks क्या है, पर सबको पता भी नहीं है risks क्या है। एक 4 साल पहले ले लीजिए, 2019 में एंड में जब कोविड had struck China in some part, nobody ever thought that it can come to India. It was as late as February, nobody thought that it would hit India. And in March, it was a reality. And somewhere from April onwards, we were all locked down. Nobody saw it coming. So risks, as I say, can come anytime, every time. It can hit us anywhere, somewhere. How do we prepare proactively and manage our risks is the key. Risks सबको पता है पर पता भी नहीं है. We all know risks, yet we don't understand risks. And while we all know risks, what we don't know is what we don't know. Uncertainty is the name of the game. कल क्या होगा किसको पता नहीं. But जो अगर होगा उसके लिए हम तैयार है और हम प्रोएक्टिवली कर सकते हैं हमारी तैयारी. When the event comes, we can respond with full knowledge, we can respond with full awareness. So our decision making which is there is absolutely with complete clarity and consciousness. We don't react, we should respond. So with this background, let me take you through my presentation and my understanding of risks in cooperative banking and how the functions of compliance, the function of governance, the function of audit can help us mitigate risks for our better. So do we really understand risks? We all do, yet we don't do. Risk is what can go wrong, and anything can go wrong. And we do a lot of activities, banks do a lot of operations. Any operation can fail. Any operation cannot go the manner in which it happens. A simple thing like accepting cash, you may get a fake note. Transfers of money, there could be money laundering. Issuance of credit, the borrower will not pay on time, you will have an NPA. Your ATM may run out of cash. Your systems may go down. So any activity can go wrong. And we don't see it coming. Because we are all wired for the positives. We believe that the controls in place will function properly. But exceptions do happen. And especially when there are manual controls, the element of human error is always ensure that a thing may go wrong. So what is risk? Risk is a function of impact and probability. Risk is a function of impact and probability. Probability is the likelihood कि कुछ गलत हो सकता है, और impact अगर गलत कुछ हो गया तो उसका लॉस क्या होगा, उसका हम पे हिट क्या होगी, फाइनेंशियली मेरे P&L या बॉटम लाइन को कैसे अफेक्ट करेगा. And then probability is how likely is it that it will happen. Now, COVID happened, the world was shut down. Can COVID 2 happen? Nobody knows. Are we prepared for COVID 2 or COVID 3 or COVID 4, whatever we call it now? COVID 2 also happened, maybe COVID 3 may would have happened. So are we prepared? And the best part about risk is, every risk can be de-risked, but it has a cost. So are we willing to spend the cost? Are we looking at cost as an expense, or are we looking at cost as an investment? And then are we looking at a return on investment? And then how are we looking at as an opportunity, maybe to build credibility, build trust, build our reputation? and then get the desired results that we want, achieve the goals that we have set. So how many of the banks have got their risk appetite and risk tolerance levels set? And when I mean risk appetite is the maximum amount of risk that one can take. And Reserve Bank of India has defined in certain ways risk appetite. So you have a capital adequacy ratio. You have a single borrower, group borrower limits beyond which you can't lend. You have your maximum cap on lendings to particular sector. You have the maximum amount of investments you can have in HTM category. In a held for trading, there is limits within the times in which you can sell it. So Reserve Bank of India has given limits under which banks are supposed to operate. But within that, what's your risk appetite? Some banks don't have appetite for unsecured lending. Don't do it. Some banks don't have the appetite for issuance of credit cards. They don't do it. Some banks concentrated in a particular state. Yes. Some are multi-state cooperative banks. Whether we have the appetite to go beyond our state, set up branches elsewhere, because we know maybe the culture of the borrowers of a particular area. So each bank would have its risk appetite. And the starting point of risk management is to know what a risk appetite is. And once that appetite is there, per transaction, what my risk tolerance is. Risk appetite is the maximum amount of risk and the loss which I am willing to bear. And risk tolerance will be the maximum amount of loss which I will bear per transaction. So the first thing is defining my risk appetite and my risk tolerance. In case that's not defined, let's clearly look and set our appetite and tolerance levels. Then is what we call the risk register, the risk universe, the risk library. आप जो भी बोलो, यूनिवर्स बोलो, रजिस्टर बोलो, लाइब्रेरी बोलो, हमने जो भी हमको रिस्क्स होने वाले हैं उसकी लॉन्ड्री लिस्ट बनाई है क्या? And anything and everything under the sun can be a risk. And there are various types of risks. All those risks will come under the risk register. And risks cannot operate in silos. Risks need to be de-risked. Risk will have a control. And that control is always a part of risk. So as a bank, I may have operational risks, I may have regulatory risks, I may have legal risks, I may have financial risks, I may have credit risks, I may have money laundering risks, I may have technology risks. Technology is keeping on changing. I may have legal risks, I may have market risks, I may have interest rate risks, I may have product risks. Some bank may have some new products coming in and customers may be going to them. Now you have the reputation risk also. You have cyber security risk. You have fraud risks as a big risk. You have risks everywhere. And then you have the controls. Controls may be manual, controls may be semi-automated, controls may be fully automated. may have controls which will be preventive, which will be proactive, or you may have controls which will be reactive or controls which will be defensive. You may have controls which will be corrective only in nature. You may have controls which will be collaborative with other controls. You may have deterrent controls like punishments. Every month you will see the regulator punishing banks with hefty fines for violation of certain norms. So the intent is that the punishment serves as a deterrent to commit that deviation, or maybe a reputation risk also. So you have all these types of controls with the risk. And then various activities that you do, maker checker, job rotations, mandatory leaves, audits, physical verifications, reconciliations, balance confirmations, authorizations, ratifications, inspections. All of these would be controls. So risk is inherent in any activity which we do. And that is what we call as the gross risk or the inherent risk. And with every risk, there will be a control. And what we need to see is, after subtracting the control from the gross or the inherent risk, what is the gap, the vulnerability or the threat, the GVT as an acronym, the gap, vulnerability or the threat, which is known as the residual risk. So, in simple terms, is my gross risk or inherent risk within my risk appetite, and is my residual risk within my risk tolerance? Have I defined my risk appetite and risk tolerance? Have I mapped all my controls to my existing risks? And have I arrived at what we call as the gap, vulnerability or the threat? And if I have done that, is my GVT less than my RT, which is the risk tolerance? If it's more than the risk tolerance, then obviously I need to do something more, institute additional controls to ensure that that gap, vulnerability or threat is lesser than my risk tolerance. So, point 1, define your risk appetite, state your risk tolerance, write down your risk register, risk universe और risk library, जो भी आप उसे कहेंगे, उसमें आपकी gross और inherent risk आनी चाहिए, आपके जो controls हैं map to those risks, and then you arrive at the residual risks, which is your gap, vulnerability or threat. That's the basic which any good bank will be doing. And then you map those risks as a function of probability. So you may have very simply high, medium, low, or very high, high, medium, low, very low. Now the very high or the high risks in impact, अगर ये हो गया तो उसका impact I may not be able to sustain. So एक मेरा टॉप मोस्ट बोरोवर है, अगर वो NPA हो गया, I will not be able to sustain the loss. If my biggest depositor goes somewhere else, can I manage those risks? That's what we need to proactively assess. So what do we do with risks? मेरे पास है रिस्क, मेरी रेसिडुअल रिस्क है, अब मैं क्या करूं? So another simple acronym, TARA. Transfer, avoid, reduce, or accept. Transfer is if, let's say, I have X amount of lending on my book. I'm not comfortable with that exposure. I may go in a consortium lending. Or I may take an insurance, so that if there is a loss, the insurance company will pay. At various stages, in retail loans, most of the banks get the life of the borrower covered. So in case something happens to the borrower, in case he dies, the insurance company will pay the loan amount. Because in COVID, it was not the risk of only the business being closed. It was also a case of a lot of borrowers actually dying. And in one cooperative bank which we were auditing, which had its branch outside Mumbai, somewhere in Bangalore, in the first phase of COVID, about 18 borrowers with an exposure of about 50 crores had died. So, when you give the loan, you would have thought about the borrower not paying or paying on time. You would not have thought of the borrower dying. So, risks can come anywhere, anytime, every time, sometime. We just need to be prepared. So one is transfer. The second is avoid. If the thing is not within my risk appetite, I need not do it. Unsecured lending मेरे बस की बात नहीं है, I may not do it. 10 करोड़ के ऊपर मैं कोई लोन में हिट नहीं ले सकता हूँ, I may not lend beyond 10 crores. Avoid. But there's one saying here. Ships are the safest when they are in the harbor. But that's not what ships are meant for. Ships are meant to sail. Banks are basically functioning on accepting monies from public in form of deposits and then lending. The various other functions which are in banking. But if you don't lend, you will not earn. So there is a risk in lending. But what they say, take calculated risks. Lend with doing your due diligence. Lend with doing your credit appraisal. Have robust systems in place. Have robust processes in place. And if you feel the risk is higher, the pricing could be higher to compensate you for maybe a loss, if any. And there should be a tolerance on which the losses will happen. So risk है तो reward है. Risk is an opportunity. But risk is also a loss. So whether we are able to manage or balance the loss is what risk management is all about. So we can't avoid. We'll have to take informed decisions. We'll have to take calculated risks. And reduce. अगर कोई पोर्टफोलियो नहीं है, कम करो, जीरो मत करो. जिस एक्सटेंट से मेरी रिस्क टॉलरेंस लिमिट है, वहां पे मैं जा सकता हूं. And the next is accept, last case. If I can't avoid it, I can't reduce it, I can't transfer it, I'll have to acknowledge it and accept it. I'll have to provide for it. NPA हो गया. मैं अभी provision करता हूं. But all is not lost. I still can follow up for recovery. If I have a collateral, I can sell the collateral and recover money. End में मेरा पैसा नहीं जाएगा. So I've accepted. If I refuse to accept, I think that's even worse. So one is, when we find as auditors or as consultants or as investors or as customers, are you acknowledging a problem? And that the biggest A is on a cyber security risk or on a fraud risk. The fact that a fraud has not happened in my bank doesn't mean that I am not vulnerable to frauds. Doesn't mean I am not suspect to frauds. It's my good luck that a fraudster didn't operate in my bank. आज साइबर सिक्योरिटी एक बैंक में हो गई. Our good luck, it didn't happen in my bank. It could have happened anywhere. आज मेरा नसीब मेरे बैंक में नहीं हुआ. But are we prepared? Because a fraudster is like what you would have seen in various Hindi movies. वो sleeper cell. वो मेरे बाजू में जा रहा है, मुझे पता नहीं है. A cyber security fraudster is a faceless criminal. He can operate from anywhere and nowhere. He can just hack my money from anywhere. So am I prepared and am I anticipating? Because fraud not only is the impact of financial loss, it's a huge reputational loss. And have I, as a risk, noted my reputation risk? एक 20 साल पहले I was auditing ICICI Bank, and I was the auditor of their largest branch in the country at that time, which is ICICI Bank Nariman Point branch. And ICICI Bank के गुजरात के कोई एक ब्रांच में कोई कस्टमर को एटीएम से पैसे नहीं मिले. अभी क्यों नहीं मिले, क्या ह्यूमन एरर थी, वो एटीएम लोडिंग एजेंसी ने उस मशीन में कैश नहीं डाले, दैट्स नॉट द पॉइंट. बट अ सिंपल operational error led to a widespread rumor that ICICI Bank doesn't have money. And throughout the night, people were rushing to ATMs to withdraw money. And how much money does an ATM will keep? And how many customers will it serve? 200, 500, 1000, 10,000 लोग आ गए. When another 20 years back, the Ganpatis of the country were drinking milk. I think the milk ran out within 2 hours. ICICI Bank के उस ब्रांच के एटीएम में जहाँ जनरली 10 लोग भी खड़े नहीं रहते, आपको 10 लोग से ज़्यादा खाली स्टेशन के एटीएम पे मिलेगा. नरीमन पॉइंट ब्रांच किसी को बम्बई पता है, फ्री प्रेस हाउस टू स्टेट बैंक के आगे शिपिंग कॉरपोरेशन विच इज एटलीस्ट 500 meters. You can imagine in 500 meters how many people would be standing in queue, withdraw their money. From the currency chest, RBI के वैन्स जस्ट पार्क थे, 4 वैन्स. एक वैन का कैश खत्म हुआ, दूसरे ने डाला, तीसरे ने डाला, चौथे ने डाला. RBI actively supported the bank because it was just rumors. Within 6 hours, everything died down. But that was ICICI Bank. अगर ये छोटे बैंक में हुआ, before the bank can react and get money, the bank will close down. एक 2 साल पहले, there were banks on whom I was the statutory auditor. There were news that the banks are facing major losses and people should withdraw money. And these news today, there's what we have not discovered a risk, and more potent than any other risk is the social media risk, the WhatsApp forward. And this WhatsApp forward spread like wildfire, and people were queuing at the bank to withdraw their money. Now, what do banks do? Banks take deposits and surplus deposits deploy amongst people who need it. Somebody who has excess funds places it with the bank for an interest, and a slightly higher rate is given to the borrower. अब पब्लिक पैसे निकालने लगेगी तो बैंक को तो देना है, बिकॉज डिपॉजिट्स आर रिपेबल ऑन डिमांड. वेयर विल इट हैव द मनी ऑन द एसेट साइड? लाइबिलिटी पे कर रहे हैं, एसेट साइड से कहाँ से पैसे आएंगे? इसके लिए बैंक्स का SLR CRR है, बट कैश रिजर्व रेशियो इज ओनली 3%. उससे आगे तो इंटरेस्ट नहीं मिल रहा है, तो मैं CRR क्यों रखूँ कैश? मेरा SLR is only 19%. The rest is in advances. And the moment an borrower knows that the bank is going bankrupt, bankruptcy is the last stage. Solvency is the second stage, but the first stage is liquidity. So the liquidity risk becomes a solvency risk to the bankruptcy risk. The moment he sees a liquidity, the last thing he will give is return his money back on time. So we need to manage a lot of things, including our reputation, because reputation is the key. So whether the social media animal is something we've managed, and we've considered that as a risk, is what we all need to see, because rumors can spread like wildfire and damage the reputation of a bank. So what is our problem? The problem is, do we have a structured approach towards risks? We all know risks, yet we don't have a structured manner of dealing with risks. Aaj when risk comes, especially in our day-to-day life also, we react with panic. We respond by our gut, which may not be the best possible course of action. So are we using our logical, rational minds, or are we doing things in panic? So this is what a structured approach to risk is what is needed. The second is, what's the culture and what's the governance? What is the tone at the top? Is the top management walking the walk, walking the talk, or walking the walk? Whatever you say. First is, have we acknowledged risks कि risk होगा ही, मैं उसे कैसे contain करूं, and how best, how effectively, how efficiently do I manage my risks is the key. Acknowledge the problem. Is there a culture where that is respected? Do I have a chief risk officer? Do I have risk champions? Do I have this risk register, risk universe, risk library? Do I have my risk appetite, risk tolerance limit set? Do I have a risk policy? Is the policy a real policy in spirit, or is it just cut pasted from some other bank, or is it drafted from some consultant, and is it so because the RBI letter of the law says that I should have a risk policy? So is it compliance with the letter, or is it a real spirit action? And that's what my culture is. That I acknowledge risks, I accept risks, and I manage risks as a source of competitive advantage. And if you look at the history of organizations, not just banks, the organizations which have succeeded are the ones which have managed their risks better. And the organizations which have failed are the ones which have not anticipated the risks, what will be coming, what will be the change, and that's where they failed. You have classic examples, Nokia, Motorola, Kodak. In India, there will be various other who would not have moved with the times, and they would have just become extinct. So we need to move up with the times, we need to catch up, and that's where we just had a talk on artificial intelligence. So the ABC, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing is here to stay. How do I leverage technology? How do I manage it to my advantage? Is what? So when they said 10 साल पहले banks may not survive, banking will. And what they meant was brick and mortar branches. आज GPay से it's very common to transfer funds. आज रिक्शा वाला भी GPay लेता है. आज fintech is here to stay. Fintech is a huge competitor to a lot of fee-based activities we are doing. आज net banking is very common. कोई ब्रांच में कितने लोग आते हैं? Cash पहले, how many people are dealing in cash? And who saw demonetization coming? 8 बजे आके अब प्राइम मिनिस्टर अनाउंस की दिस नोट्स आर नो लॉन्गर वैलिड. It was a shock. But it was not a shock in terms of the notes going. It was a huge cultural shock that led the way for cash being no longer the preferred mode of payment. And if you see a multitude of banks, the amount of cash which is received and deposited, maybe not in volume, but in number has substantially gone down. आज BST बस भी ऐप से पेमेंट लेती है. Cash is not being taken. आज train bookings are all happening online. Your tolls, there is a FASTag. So cash, which was king, is out. So maybe RBI has floated the concept of a digital currency. Who knows what the future is? Are we prepared? Change is the only constant in life. Are we prepared for the change? So one, have we identified our risks? Having identified the risk, have we evaluated the risk in terms of probability and impact? कौन से risks में impact ज़्यादा है? कौन से risk में probability ज़्यादा है? And unfortunately, risks which have the least probability, कि हमको लगता है ये risk होगी ही नहीं, इसकी probability of occurrence is low. The point is we are not prepared and we have not instituted controls for those risks. And when these risks hit us, we are most vulnerable. So it is the low probability risks with the high impact which is the biggest source of worry. Then evaluation. Evaluation is listing down your risks in terms of their urgency and importance. कि कौन से risk को मैं पहले address करूं. There are many risks. Like in a day, when we start a day, we have various activities to be done. But कौन सी important है जो मैं पहले करूं कि वो important activity urgent न हो जावे. I don't end up firefighting. I don't come under stress. As I see another acronym, I don't become sad. Stress, anxiety, disorder, depression. So do I anticipate risks well in advance? Do I institute my controls to manage the risks? So do I prioritize my risk? And that is what RBI wants us to do in the risk-based internal audit. So when an auditor is assessing, they tell him you spend your time most on evaluating or verifying or checking those risks which have the highest impact. So risk-based internal audit or risk-based audit is nothing but focusing your attention where it is truly deserved. All activities do not carry the same risks. Focus on those activities where the risks are more. So maybe 10-90 rule, 20-80 rule, 20% of activities will have 80% of the risk. Focus on those 20%, divide your time across that. And there's one more thing which auditors need to follow, is the cow fell in the ditch theory. And the cow fell in the ditch theory says that when a cow falls in the ditch, the first thing you do is to take the cow out of the ditch. पहले वो खड्डे में गिर गई है तो खड्डे से बाहर निकालो. ये तो करो ही करो. But don't stop at that. Find out why she fell in the ditch. And then do all activities to ensure that the cow doesn't fall in the ditch again. So when there is a problem, rectify the problem. But why did the problem occur? Why? Address the why. If the why is addressed, it will not recur again. So why are your audit reports having the same issues over and over again? What we are reporting is a transactional error. The real error is the process gap. A risk-based audit tries to address that process gap. ये क्यों गलत हो रहा है? अगर मैं वो क्यों को रेक्टिफाई नहीं करूं, मैं क्या हुआ उसको करेक्ट करूं विदाउट नोइंग ये क्यों हुआ. आई एम ट्रीटिंग द सिम्टम, आई एम नॉट ट्रीटिंग द रूट कॉज. सिंपल केस, मुझे अगर मलेरिया हुआ है, मैं दवाई लेता हूं. And maybe I don't know that as an Ayurvedic treatment of having some papaya leaves or something. डेंगू हुआ तो, बट ये क्यों हुआ? There might be mosquitoes as a result of some stench, some water piled up. If I don't rectify that, आज मुझे हुआ, कल किसी और को होगा. So am I going to the root cause of the problem and correcting the problem? Or am I superfluously treating the symptom? We as auditors, we as risk managers need to understand what we are doing, and that we can only do if we know the why. Then what is the volume at risk? What is the exposure? जितना ज़्यादा exposure उतनी risk मेरी ज़्यादा. And what is the volatility? And if the risk starts from Kanyakumari, how quickly will it go to Leh Ladakh? So COVID, December China, March India, maybe April the whole world. How fast it travels. So you need action at the speed of thought. Are we prepared to act at the speed of thought? We're living in a lightning age. आज एक click of a button से funds are transferred here and there. Are we ready to stop any wrong transfer of funds? Is the technology geared? So this is what we all need to proactively anticipate and prepare. And then the black swan events. Swans were always white, are always white. But the history says that there was some black swan sighting in Ireland way back in the 20th century. So black swan event is something which is impossible, but not rare. So same way, COVID was a black swan event. Maybe who knows whether that black swan event will come again. So are we prepared? The birds hit. Earlier in Mumbai, there were a lot of bird hits. The aircrafts were getting damaged. Now we have not heard of it. So we managed to control it. Cyber security, it hit one bank. Big loss. It hasn't hit again that big. Doesn't mean the risk has gone. Maybe that person is just waiting for a right moment. Frauds. Frauds are like cockroaches. If you see one cockroach, it doesn't mean it's the only cockroach. There could be many hiding in the corner. So do you have cockroaches in your closet? And there's one more theory of frauds, the popcorn theory. Popcorns are addictive. You won't stop at one popcorn. So frauds are addictive. It's the fraud triangle: opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. And if we give the opportunity to the fraudster by poor controls, he will hit back. Obviously, he has pressure to earn money, whatever, greed, fun, revenge, जो भी उसका motive होगा. But we need to be prepared. We need to accept, we need to acknowledge risks. Credit, operations, regulatory, compliance, money laundering, IT, legal, people risk. At times, people leaving the organization become big risks. Your reputation risk, the market risk. मार्केट पूरा चेंज हो गया. यूएस में फेड ने इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ा दिया. Our stock markets fall. Now see how connected the world is. Fed ने उधर rates बढ़ाया. FIs will think, why should I risk money here? I'll keep money there. I'll earn a higher interest. Goes for a toss. The rupee will go for a toss. Those who are importers will have margin pressures. If they have not hedged, they'll be in for big time losses. Now hedging is a control, but hedging has a cost. How many organizations really hedge who are importers? Bankers are supposed to check, but do bankers check? And another risk is, do bankers have the skills of rehabilitation? Aaj bankers only follow up for money if it's not coming. But can the banker sense something is going wrong? And if he senses something is going wrong, does he have any resources beyond the collateral to recover the money? Does he have the skills to guide the borrower on what to do, what not to do? He may monitor to ensure he doesn't do diversion of funds, siphoning of funds नहीं करेगा, but उसको रिहैबिलिटेट करने की स्किल्स है क्या? That's something we need to learn. There's so many skills we need to learn. It's not just the technical skills, a lot of soft skills. Communication. Because I need to train people, I need to communicate. If I want to lay off people, I need to communicate. I should not have a strike. So, risks are everywhere. Even failure to detect a risk is a risk. We've talked about manual controls, automated controls, preventive controls, proactive controls, reactive controls, collaborative, deterrent, detective. Controls have a cost. Do we view the cost as an expense or as an investment? And are we testing those controls independently? Independent testing of controls, is it done? So maker checker, job rotation, reconciliations, authorizations, balance confirmations, physical verifications, ratifications, authorizations, audits, reviews, documentation, MIS, SOP, training, mandatory leaves, ये सब हो रहे क्या? हम ये सब कर रहे हैं क्या? और कर रहे हैं तो इंडिपेंडेंटली ये कोई टेस्ट कर रहा है कि ये कितने इफेक्टिवली कर रहे हैं या एफिशिएंटली हो रहे हैं? सो मैं काफ़ी चीज़ करता हूँ, बट मैं कैसे कर रहा हूँ, मैं कितनी इफेक्टिवली कर रहा हूँ, मैंने खुद को इवैल्यूएट किया है क्या कि मैं किस लेवल पे हूँ? वन ऑफ द बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस जो हाईली इवॉल्व बैंक्स, स्पेशली फॉरेन बैंक्स करती है, इज दे हैव समथिंग कॉल्ड अ रिस्क मैच्योरिटी कर्व, कि मैं कौन से लेवल पे हूँ और मुझे कौन से लेवल पे जाना है. सो लेट्स से लेवल 5 इज द टॉप मोस्ट लेवल. मैं आज कौन से लेवल पे हूँ? आज मैं 1 में हूँ, मैं डिफेंसिव हूँ, या मैं लेवल 2 पे हूँ, मैं थोड़ा रिस्पॉन्सिव हूँ, या मैं लेवल 3 पे हूँ, मैं थोड़ा मैच्योर्ड हूँ, या मैं लेवल 4 पे हूँ जो मैं इवॉल्व हूँ, या मैं लेवल 5 पे हूँ जो मैं लीडर हूँ. सो हैव आई डन एन असेसमेंट कि मैं कौन से लेवल पे हूँ? सो रिस्क मैच्योरिटी कर्व एनालिसिस, रिस्क मैच्योरिटी कर्व असेसमेंट इज समथिंग जो हर बैंक को करनी चाहिए. जो मैं कर रहा हूँ क्या? रिस्क रेटिंग, मैंने खुद को रिस्क रेट किया है क्या? देयर आर वेरियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, आपकी क्रिसिल हो, इकरा हो, जो रेट करती है. जैसे बोरोवर की रेटिंग होती है, लिस्टेड बैंक्स की रेटिंग होती है, बट आई हैव माई कैमल्स रेटिंग. बट कैमल्स रेटिंग में ABCD जो भी है, मैं अंदर जाके देख रहा हूँ कि मेरे कितने मार्क्स किधर कम है, या अगर कम है तो मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ कि मैं वो मार्क्स नेक्स्ट ईयर इंक्रीज होवे. मैं कौन से एरिया में वीक हूँ? C में हूँ, A में हूँ, M में हूँ, E में हूँ, L में हूँ, या S में हूँ? मेरा ICAP है क्या? एंड ICAP इज इंटरनल कैपिटल एडिक्वेसी असेसमेंट प्रोसेस, जो हर कमर्शियल बैंक्स को मैंडेटरी है. एंड जस्ट बिकॉज ये कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स को मैंडेटरी नहीं है डजंट मीन मुझे वो करना नहीं चाहिए. Basel 2, Basel 3 नॉर्म्स भले मैंडेटरी नहीं है, मैं वॉलंटरी तो कर सकता हूँ. मैं देख सकता हूँ कि मैं कहाँ बेंचमार्क्ड हूँ. बिकॉज आप देखोगे ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम आरबीआई वो रेगुलेशंस कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स पे लेके आएगा ही आएगा। पहले कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स और कमर्शियल बैंक्स में एनपीए आइडेंटिफिकेशन इसमें भी डिफरेंस था। आस्ते आस्ते एनपीए आइडेंटिफिकेशन भी 90 डे नॉर्म, एनपीए ऑटोमेशन सब आ गए। दे आर बैंक्स, दे आर डूइंग बैंकिंग, दे आर रेगुलेटेड बाय आरबीआई, सब रेगुलेशन सेम होंगे। सो जो अदर बैंक्स में अच्छी प्रैक्टिसेस है मैं उससे बेंचमार्क कर रहा हूं क्या, एंड हैव आई केप्ट गोल्स एंड टारगेट्स। आज एशियन गेम्स चल रहे हैं। आई थिंक पिछले 10 दिन से या उससे ज़्यादा पहले ऐड्स आते थे, इस बार 100 पार, सबने सुना होगा। लास्ट एशियन गेम्स में हमारे 70 मेडल्स थे। इस टाइम वी हैड केप्ट अ टारगेट ऑफ 100। अब टारगेट ऑब्वियसली की है, कुछ प्लानिंग की है, बट एक गोल है सामने। As of the date I am speaking, as of the time I am speaking, India has already won 74 medals. So 70 के ऊपर चले गए। हमारे 100 शायद होंगे, 100 न होंगे तो 90 तो होंगे ही होंगे, जिस रेट से जा रहे हैं जो एश्योर्ड मेडल्स है। So have I kept a target? Am I moving towards that target? So मैं रिस्क रेटिंग में if I say I should be लीडिंग नहीं तो मैं इवॉल्व तो हो सकता हूं। वाई शुड आई बी जस्ट मैच्योरिंग? आई शुड मैच्योर लॉन्ग बैक। सो कीप रियलिस्टिक टारगेट्स, लुक एट अचीविंग दैट। हाई रिस्क इश्यूज नीड टू बी एड्रेस्ड। वाई, ये क्यों हो रहा है और मैं क्या कर सकता हूं कि ये वाई को मैं एड्रेस करूं। So right strategy in place. It is all strategic. Strategy is more important. Strategy के बाद execution आता है। Execution is also important, but strategy पहले है मेरे पास गोल है, लक्ष्य है मेरे पास। I think that's key. Tone at the top. लीडर कौन है मेरा, लीडर कैसे लीड कर रहा है। अकाउंटेबिलिटी का कल्चर है। इज देयर अ यूनिफॉर्म लैंग्वेज एंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ रिस्क। आज जो सब स्टाफ है मेरा उसको भी रिस्क पता है। ऐसा नहीं होने चाहिए कि सीईओ और एमडी को ही रिस्क पता है या बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स को रिस्क पता है। ग्रास रूट ग्राउंड लेवल पे रिस्क पता है क्या, बिकॉज ग्राउंड लेवल पे आदमी कस्टमर से डील कर रहा है। हमारा इंप्रेशन बैंक के बारे में होगा जो लास्ट माइल पॉइंट ऑफ कांटेक्ट है, तो उसकी रिस्क अंडरस्टैंडिंग है क्या, उसको हम ट्रेनिंग दे रहे हैं क्या। इज रिस्क एवरीबडीज रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी? आर वी यूजिंग मॉडल्स? आर दोज मॉडल्स बीइंग अपग्रेडेड? बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस हर बैंक्स की हम शेयर कर रहे हैं क्या? एंड द अननोन, हमको जो पता नहीं है उसका हम पता लगाने देख रहे हैं क्या, क्या हो सकता है उसके बारे में हम सोच रहे हैं क्या। रिस्क इज ऑल अबाउट अनसर्टेनिटी। आर वी लिविंग इन फियर बिकॉज ऑफ दैट अनसर्टेनिटी? आर वी नॉट टेकिंग डिसीजंस बिकॉज ऑफ दैट अनसर्टेनिटी? या हम प्रोएक्टिवली कुछ कर रहे हैं? एंड रिस्क as an advantage, that's the topic. Advantage. Is risk being used, looked as an opportunity? Risk लिया। There was an ad of Mountain Dew. डर से मत डरो, डर के आगे बढ़ो, क्योंकि डर के आगे ही जीत है। आई थिंक सबको पुरानी एड थी, अभी आ नहीं रही है। But risk, are we living in fear or are we using risk as an advantage? कोई भी एरिया में रिस्क है, एडवांसेस लो, डिपॉजिट्स लो, इन्वेस्टमेंट, फिक्स्ड एसेट्स, इंटर ऑफिस अकाउंट, हाउसकीपिंग, सस्पेंस, डेफ अकाउंट, आरबीआई रिटर्न्स, हम कैसे लीवरेज कर रहे हैं? लीवरेज इज द की. सो हाउ स्ट्रॉन्ग एक्सेप्शन रिपोर्ट्स है, पैरामीटर्स क्या सेट किए मैंने, सब स्टेक होल्डर्स एक पेज पे है क्या? हर बैंक में वेरियस स्टेक होल्डर्स है, मेरे कस्टमर्स है, मेरे डिपॉजिटर्स है, मेरे बोरोवर्स है, मेरे एम्प्लॉयज़ है, मेरा गवर्नमेंट है स्टेक होल्डर, मेरे वेंडर्स है, सोसाइटी है, सबके एक्सपेक्टेशंस कैसे मैनेज कर रहा हूँ? कमिटीज़ है, कमिटीज़ मैं फॉर्म कर रहा हूँ फॉर गवर्नेंस, आर दे मीटिंग ऑन टाइम, आर दे इफेक्टिवली टेकिंग डिसीजंस? ट्रेंड एनालिसिस, सिनारियो एनालिसिस हो रहा है क्या? एम आई आगे क्या होगा सिनारियो, उसको प्रेडिक्ट करके मैं कंट्रोल करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ क्या? फ्यूचरिस्टिक प्लानिंग, एम आई फ्यूचरिस्टिक? एम आई लिविंग इन द 23rd century? आईफोन 15 लॉन्च हुआ है, बट आई नो फॉर श्योर एप्पल इज वर्किंग ऑन आईफोन 17. आईफोन 16 रेडी है. One of my cousins is working in a company where वो chips design कर रहे हैं. He is already finished iPhone 16 long back. He is working on iPhone 17. उसका year end target है. So next year iPhone 16 आएगा. जब भी iPhone 16 आएगा, they are ready for iPhone 17. उनकी iPhone 18 की planning हो गई है. इतने एडवांस में सोच है. हमारी उतनी आगे सोच है क्या? And whenever you need help, ask for support. You have n number of people, n number of trainers. किसी को भी, the culture should be of asking help. आज the era is not of just competition. It is the era of collaboration. Cooperate, to collaborate, to co-create. सो कॉपरेशन जो कोऑपरेटिव बैंक का ये है, वेदर वी आर कोऑपरेटिंग इन द राइट स्पिरिट, वी आर कोलैबोरेटिंग एंड वी आर को क्रिएटिंग. सो वी आर मूविंग फ्रॉम डेटा टू नॉलेज टू इंफॉर्मेशन टू विजडम. वी आर मूविंग फ्रॉम हाइंडसाइट टू इनसाइट टू फोरसाइट. और आर वी प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर द 22nd century नाउ? So, disrupt risks before they disrupt you. The more you know, the more you know that you still have a lot more to know. Learning never stops. Be a lifelong learner. I think employees are the biggest assets. They are the change. टेक्नोलॉजी कोई भी कॉपी कर सकता है, टेक्नोलॉजी कोई भी खरीद सकता है, बट टेक्नोलॉजी के पीछे जो दिमाग है, वो दिमाग रेप्लिकेट करने will take time. Artificial intelligence will impact us, but finally artificial intelligence को भी human intelligence ने create किया है. So how are we leveraging the human capital which is there? I think our biggest strength. And cooperative banks are known for their service. They are known for the culture of trust. They are known for the culture of caring and sharing. So how are we leveraging on that culture to manage our risks? So action at the speed of thought. Think as a thought leader. So whenever there is a risk, you need to de-risk. Every risk can be de-risked. Before risks disrupt you, you be the disruptor and disrupt risks. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Any questions? I'm willing to take.